What's up guys, it's DJ back again with another video. Today we're going to be talking about the 3 stages that every Pokemon investor goes through when it comes to investing in Pokemon product, whether it's sealed, PSA, or whatever you're investing in regards to Pokemon cards or collectibles. These are the 3 stages that you go through. I'm going to go through each one in detail and give you guys some, ideas on what you should think about before you start investing and what kind of process you should go through when investing in this kind of thing. So without further ado, cue that intro, let's get into it. So guys, if you don't already know, the 3 stages are buy, hold, and sell. Sounds very simple, but there are certain things that you need to do as you go through this. And I've made it simple so then it's just easy to follow. Of course, there's other few steps along the way. Starting off with buying, guys, there's a few things you need to ask yourself and things you got to think about before you start buying product to invest in. First things first, I'm the realist, just kidding. But first thing you got to think about is capital, your money. You got to spend within your means, of course, and if you are new and you're trying to invest in Pokemon cards, you got to think about how much you want to put into it, how much you're gonna, save up or invest in this thing, because at the end of the day, you're putting money into this, right? And we all know this is a risk, and we got to be careful with what risk we take and how much you're going to spend, because you don't want to go spending above what you can spend, what you can afford. And if you're thinking about investing in something big, something large, then 100% I reckon you should do is save up that capital before you just jump in and, get a credit card, buy some debt. Especially if you're new, you got to be careful, tread some waters very carefully. Second thing you guys need to think about is you got to get rid of that collector mindset. Not completely, because it is great, and a lot of us are collectors first and become investors second. The only thing is, with collectors, like myself, I fall into this category, but it's hard to distinguish between the two unless you keep them separate. Your collection, your investments. Because the thing is, at the end of the day, when you invest in something, you're intending to sell that later down the line. And usually collectors, when they buy something, they intend to keep that. They hold it. They intend to keep that item for themselves, right? They don't really intend to sell that. I'll give you a few examples, I guess. If there's a Weedle collector or a Caterpie collector, they're probably not the best investments, but you buy it anyway because that's what they like. That's the Pokemon they love. Everybody asks the question, what do I start off collecting? I'm going back into the hobby. I'm going back into Pokemon cards. What do I start off by collecting? Everybody usually says the generic answer is collect what you like, collect what you love. Not necessarily those things that you like and love will become great investments. And I guess it's good to separate the two, because sometimes the things that you like and love become investable because they grow in value, but doesn't, it's hard to let go. That's the only trouble with that, right? So I'll give you another example, Z&G, with Z&G Emporium. That guy, I love that guy. He's got his own personal collection. He doesn't really show it that often, but he talks about it. He's got a few first edition base set booster packs. He doesn't intend to sell them. He bought them intending to keep them and not, really advertise it and sell it. He has shown it on his channel once or twice, but that is part of his collection. Whereas everything else that he does sell and it offers up are investments, right? So he's bought some of these things, and a lot of people say, why don't you just hold these things and let them grow value so then, you could sell it later down the line. And then he comes back with the capital argument where he needs to sell these things to get more capital to reinvest. And I guess that's cash flow. He's running a business, and not all of us are running businesses, but that's kind of the way you got to think about it. If you want to purely invest, or if you want to do both, it's a good idea to keep them separate. Because another example is myself. I intended to, resell that Bulbasaur, Ivysaur, Venusaur that I have. That was my first big, large investment. And any investor, you tell them, I'll give you $350 last year, and you could sell it this year for like $2,500. That's a good investment. You should sell that. It's already duplicated. It's already, tripled, quadrupled in value. it's a good time to sell. But the thing is, my collector mindset is getting in the way. I can't let go of that card. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's a chance that it could grow more if I hold on to it longer, which we're going to get into in the next, stage. But if you're planning on just investing, you can't get attached to these things, because at the end of the day, that's like $2,500 that I could be spending on more investments, future investments. It's capital just sitting there, potential capital, not guaranteed capital, because we're going to talk about that later when we go into the sales stage. But if you see what I mean, I just have cards lying about. Yeah, their values are there, but it's just dead stock, right? So you got to think of investments differently, keep them separate. I guess another point you can say is, if you like something so much, try to buy duplicates of it. Try to buy multiple of it if you can afford it, right? So, if I decided to buy, Bulbasaur, Ivysaur, Venusaur last year, and I bought two of them, two of each, I wouldn't have an issue selling that now, because I'll have one to keep and one to sell, right? So that's where, the collector and investing kind of thing mixes up. But just be careful with that. I'm not necessarily saying it is a bad thing, but try to keep them separate. I think the perfect example is definitely Z&G Emporium, where he has things he's definitely going to sell, he intends to sell, and then things he's going to keep for himself. All right, guys, so this is still in the buying stage. We talked about the collector's mindset, trying to, getting that balance right, making sure you have the capital and make sure you don't spend above and beyond what you can afford. The next thing in part of this stage one, where we're talking about buying, I think buying is definitely the most important stage of them all, because if you don't buy, you don't have an investment. So you got to be careful with what you buy. You got to do your own research. You can follow trends, but you just got to be careful about those trends. A lot of great investments start off with timing, and by the time those trends, if you catch on to those trends really late, you might be buying those products at a premium, those cards at a premium. Whereas if you found this on your own, you did your own research, you did your own homework, you would have got in from the ground up. You're not going in middle ground. So example of that, Burning Shadows. All right, if you invested in Burning Shadows right out of the gate, once it first came out, $150 a booster box, AUD prices, guys. If you did that from the beginning, that is kudos to you. That is a great investment choice, because if you saw the potential then, that was a good time. But I'm seeing people buy booster boxes of them now. I'm seeing people investing in it now. That's cool and all. There's a chance, there's potential there. That's why people are investing in it. And that is part of the thing that you got to decide. And the whole part of the buying process is making the right decision, or making a decision that you're happy with. Me personally, I think it's already reached a point where I don't want to buy it. I don't want to buy a booster box at that price, If I was to invest in Burning Shadows, I would have invested in it when it first came out. I don't know, there's a lot of hype around it now, and it's just too late. Like, for me, it's too late. There is a chance it can go even up further and further, but I think I can invest my money in more, Champion's Path, things that haven't been released yet and they're still regular retail price, and see how those things manage. I could still invest in grading my own cards, because when you engrade your own cards, you can sell them ideally for a profit. It really depends on the grades and all that stuff. But yeah, you got to make your decisions. You got to look at the research. You got to look at the market, and careful with trends. But if you get on that, train before it takes off, that could be a good thing. So I don't know who started this whole Burning Shadows trend, or this, this train that's Burning Shadows is on. But if you got on that train early, that's a really good sign. But I think for me to get on that train now, I feel like it's I'm already paying a premium. I'm risking that, buying that booster box or buying that product in dropping in value back down to regular retail price if they were to reprint it. Always a possibility, of course, but yeah, I'm just not going to take that risk. I think I'm fine with what I've got now, but that's me. You make your own decisions. You got to make your own calls. You got to make your, do that research. And if you're comfortable with what you've decided, then go ahead and buy it. So a quick recap, guys, do your market research, blah, blah, blah. And then you also got to make sure that there is room for potential growth there. As I said with Burning Shadows, there is room for potential growth, but I think it's already grown quite a bit that I'm not comfortable with it right now. So that's me personally. The other thing you guys got to do when you buy something, before you buy something, is you got to ask yourself this question. Because this is an investment, right? This is not for a collection. You can't be making these excuses where, as like, you know, I will buy this product, and worst case scenario, if it doesn't rise in value, I'll keep it as a collection piece. You know, you got that safety net there because you're saying to yourself, worst case scenario, I'm going to keep it. But the thing is, you saved capital, you assigned money separately to an investment, right? And if you're not reselling it, then it's a collection piece. It's not an investment piece. It just changes, right? And I know a lot of people say that, including myself. I've said it before. And I think it's a bit of a safety net. It's a bit of a trap. You tend to make you tend to make better decisions when there is no safety. You know, when you're really thinking hard, you're making sure you're making the right choices, because you don't want to just use that as a backup all the time. The other thing is, some things you might not even like in your collection, you bought as an investment piece, but it just transforms, or, you know, just transfers into a collection piece because you're like, I couldn't sell it, you know? And that's just another thing you got to think about. You got to ask yourself, can I sell this item? Can I sell it? Because if you buy this thing and you don't think you can sell it later down the track, I highly recommend that you don't get it. That's just what I think. But if you yourself don't think someone will buy it, then why bother investing in it, you know? So, example, Steam Siege, right, has grown in value. Back in the day, if you bought it brand new, it was $150 Australian price, and right now they're going for $200 to $300. So has it risen in value? Yes, it has. But does anybody want it? Does anybody want to pay that much for a Steam Siege booster box? Does anybody want that product or Pokemon or whatever it is? Is the Pokemon popular? Is the set popular? Is the product popular? Do people want it? If people don't want it, they're not going to buy it. If you don't have people buying it, then you're not going to make that money, even if it has risen in value. All right, so that's something you got to think about, because you, like, at the end of the day, you bought this with the intention to resell or to sell later down the line as an investment. Investments tend to, you know, you want to make money out of it. You want to grow out of it. You want, you know, that product or that card to grow, and it's not going to, it can grow. A lot of people are in that stage where my product has grown, but they haven't sold it yet, right? You need to get to that stage where you actually just sell it to know, you know, all right, that's the cycle complete. And yeah, I'll talk about that in further detail as we go along through the stages. The other thing, while thinking about buying products, and like I said, buying is very important. That's like the starting point. You got to think a lot about different things before you start just dishing out cash all over the place. So you got to think about the supply. Obviously, that is something very common people talk about, especially when it comes to modern. Supply is huge, demand as good as well. So you really got to think, you know, if you're investing in booster boxes, for example, a collector would buy every single booster box as they go along, but an investor will buy booster boxes that they think will rise in value. So, you know, if you bought every single XY booster box back when it first came out, yeah, it sounds good, but that's more of a collector's decision, I would say. As an investor, you'd probably be thinking more about, all right, Flash Fire, you know, the ones that have Charizards, the ones that have Chase cards, the ones that have popular Pokemon, the ones that have good, you know, sets, good cards in it. You know, you got to be thinking about that as an investor, because you're not going to waste money, capital on something that you think is not going to do well. So it's just funny how, because it's just really hard, because as a collector and an investor, you can get really mixed up. You really got to keep that, you try to keep it separate if you can. And that's probably one of the hardest things, getting attached to what you buy and making your decisions purely out of intending to resell or to keep. So I know I've drilled that a lot at the start of this video. So I got to drill it out again. So the whole buying process, you also got to think about, is this car rare? Is it undervalued right now? The only way to know that is through that research. If you don't do that research, you're not gonna know. If you're not engaged in the hobby, if you don't really like the hobby, you're not really gonna know these things. So I suggest, if you are investing in Pokemon, first of all, at least like it. Because if you don't like it, chances are you're going to count more of your losses than your gains. And to be honest, I think there's a lot more losses than there is gains, which I could probably talk about in another video. But because this is such a hobby and we don't really count all that time and effort that we put into it, we really just count the wins when we sell our cards. So let's go to the next stage. The next stage, guys, is hold/observe. And it just pretty much speaks for itself. Hold that item, hold that card. Once you have made your decision and you've bought that card, assuming that you've done all your research, assuming you got enough capital, assuming that you're intending to resell that item, so you're not keeping that, don't fall in love with it. So keep that aside. Make sure you know that, this is my investment, this is what I want to sell. And monitor that item on eBay, so listings, all these other PSA price. It depends what you're getting, really. But monitor the market, monitor the Facebook groups, the Instagrams, the YouTube channels, all these things where people are either opening that product or, there's a hype around this card, this certain product. You want to know these things because it's your investment. It's, when you invest in stocks, or in a house or something like that, you're always looking at the house prices. You're looking at the stock market. You're checking, how is it going? Is it up? Is it down? And you're going to get those fluctuations, right? But at the end of the day, you really need to monitor these things. If it's a pure investment, right? Collectors might be a different story because you intended to buy that product to keep, so you don't really care about reselling it. You don't really need to look at your values all the time. But with your investments, you really do need to do that, because you need to sell at the right time and you want to hold at the right time. Obviously, your aim is to buy low and sell high, but it doesn't always work out like that. So timing is very important, once again, with holding and observing, because sometimes there's cards that are really at its highest, at its pinnacle, and if you hold way too long, sometimes it just boom, plummets down. So if you decide you're happy with where it's at, then that's probably the right time to sell. And if you're thinking a bit, it's only double my money, maybe it can be more, then you're risking potentially that, it really depends what you want to do. But if you think double your money is not enough and you want to hold longer, then you're risking that it might go down, you're risking it might go up. We don't know what it's going to be, but there is always a chance it can go either way. So if you're not happy with double, then you can wait longer. If you're happy with double, then probably think about selling. It really depends on you, how you monitor the market and see, last week somebody sold the exact same card you have as an investment, or exact same booster box that you got for a certain price that you like. Then you can, obviously try to sell that booster box as well and get the capital, reinvest, do the same thing over again. If you're a flipper and you're not planning on holding and you're just planning on reselling right away, you pretty much skip stage 2, guys. You go from buy to sell straight away, because when you bought that item, you already knew that was undervalued. You already knew the prices were, X amount for that item, and you just saw it for, half of that. So obviously as a flipper, you would probably buy that, sell it for double, get your profit, reinvest. That's just, I guess, the flipper mentality. But as a general investor, if you're holding for a long time, just continuously watch the market, make sure you're looking out for your product. And sometimes it can be hard because your product might not be always around, especially if you bought something that was really rare, something that's not very common, then it could be hard to monitor. But if you're happy to hold on to it, I guess this is the only time where the collector's mentality can help you, is when you're patient enough to just hold on to it. And collectors are very patient, just generally. If someone says, I'm going to put this into my collection, generally speaking, that means they're going to hold on to that for a while. I actually spoke to a guy. He said, he got a PSA 10 Alakazam, I think it was, and he said, I'm gonna hold this. It's gonna be in my collection for a while, right? And then next minute, like 2 weeks later, he's like, he put it up for sale. And I'm like, bro, you just said that you were gonna hold that in your collection, and he's just like, yeah, that's 2 weeks. It's long enough. And I guess people's mindsets are a little bit different. But when you think about collections, they stay with you. They stick to you. Now, I think a lot of people are on that stage 2 position because, like I said, I think the collectors thing gets into us, and we're also thinking about holding and making sure maybe we get more. That is the ultimate goal. And as human beings, we get a bit like, we kind of gamble, right? It could go more, and some people don't want to wait that long, or they need the capital, and then they just sell. Makes kind of sense. So we're on stage 2, a lot of us, including me. I don't sell a lot of my things, but when I do, I generally sell the things that I don't really want, and generally I sell them for more than what I paid for. So at the end of the day, the full cycle of an investment, or a successful investment, is buying and then holding and then selling, which we're going to talk about now. All right, guys, the selling part of things can be a little bit tricky. People make it sound so easy, and they also talk about, oh, look, I've got this card, it's worth $3,000, or I've got this card, it's worth $1,000. But the thing is, it is worth that, but it's not worth that until you sell it for that. And I guess that's the funny thing, from the difference between stage 2 and stage 3 is, it's not finalized the sale. If nobody wants your card or product, and I guess that brings us back to the stage 1 where we're talking about buying things that people want and people need and people like for their collections or people want to open. If you didn't make that decision correctly back then, and it's really hard to make that choice because sometimes it's just hard to read. But if you have something and it's risen in value, like the Steam Siege booster box, people say, oh, I've got 10 of those booster boxes, it's doubled in price. But the thing is, if you can't sell it, it's like, what's the point? Because the whole point of the investment is so you can sell it and get the growth back. And when you haven't sold your items, then you're just pretty much on stage 2. You haven't finalized the whole investment cycle. And I guess a lot of people, it's different. People want to sell 5 years down the line, 10 years down the line. They're thinking long term, which is all cool. But in a way, their investment journey is not complete, right? It's not finished, and it's an unknown. You don't know if you're going to get $10,000 for your jungle booster box in 10 years' time. Maybe it's 20,000, maybe it's 5,000. Who knows? Nobody knows. But, I guess if you're satisfied with the growth, if you're satisfied with what you got, and you want to keep going, that's your call. If you want to sell it now and reinvest, then that's your call too. And that also brings us back, these things are always just linked, that just brings us back to the point I made before where if you've decided to, you bought that with intention to resell later down the line, it's just so hard to, separate that attachment, because Pokemon cards ain't like stocks, it ain't like shares. We get attached, we like these things. Generally, we buy these things because we like them, and because we like them, we don't see the pure numbers, As I said before, a banker or an investor, if you're purely investing into this, and you see, oh, well, my card was $100 last year, now it's $600, good time to sell, right? Who can complain? That's like grown 6 times its value. So when you do sell, make sure you advertise correctly, make sure, because you've done all that research, because you've monitored the market as you went through when you were holding it, you know what to price that at. Price it out fairly, package it right, protect it. And so then when you do decide to sell, and your buyer is happy with what, the product that they got, they can either recommend you, you get good ratings. It depends. If you're selling on eBay, you want some good feedback. If you're selling on Marketplace, people, you become a trusted seller. You want to get that reputation where it's easy for you to sell your things. And that's the whole point of, this investing game, right? I'll give it another example, guys. So if you have cards that are hard to sell, wouldn't you rather cards that are just easy and easy to move and easy to sell? It just makes life so much easier, and that makes the investment so much, in a way, better. So my friend, actually, he has a Shining Celebi PSA 10 card. You know, that is a good card, right? Celebi is a decent Pokemon. It's a shining card. It is PSA 10, so that's the best condition you're going to get, right? It's vintage. He's asking for market price, which is about $1,200 right now, $1,100 Australian, and nobody wants to buy it. Nobody wants to buy it. Well, there could be a few reasons why, but one of the reasons the reason why I think people don't really want it, or maybe they do want it, but the price is just unaffordable for a lot of us, right? And that's the thing when you gotta really think about when you're investing in some of these products. If you got some really high-end stuff, sometimes that could be really super duper hard to sell, because let's think about the majority of people that are in this game right now. A lot of us are young, a lot of us don't have that much money, and yeah, of course there is maybe, you know, out of 100%, maybe 10% of people are like high-end rollers, you know, with lots of cash, lots of buying, all that stuff. But a lot of us don't have that kind of capital. And it can be hard to, you know, justify spending $1,000 on a card, $1,200 for a card, even if it's a good card, right? So you got to think about your target, you know, before you buy. You got to think about who you're targeting here. And that makes your whole sales, you know, part of things easier. So as I said before, this is getting hard. Squirtles, right? If you buy PSA 10 Squirtles or raw Squirtle cards from base set and you grade them equal to the value of a Shining Celebi, you know, maybe you bought, you know, 10 Squirtles or 100 Squirtles, you know, I actually found out, you know, PSA 10 Squirtle base set unlimited is going for about $200 Australian right now. That's pretty expensive, but also at the same time, that is a lot cheaper than $1,000, and a lot more people can afford that. A lot more people can buy that. So if you have multiples of those, something like that, something more affordable, something easy, sometimes that is a good route to go through because it's just easy to move. If you have high-end things, it could be a bit difficult for the average person to buy. So good luck. And I know there's always buyers out there and there's people that have, you know, different ranges of income. But at the same time, people who have average just jobs, kind of like myself, right? I look at price. If I know I can't afford it, I can't afford it, you know? But there's things that you can afford, there's things that you can't afford. And yeah, you just got to think about that too, because it's hard to sell something that's just really expensive. Not saying, you know, not putting a lot of heat on, you know, high-end Pokemon products. They are great investments, especially if you bought them really cheap and they've just grown that much and the time to sell it. You know, some people wait to sell their things when they're really high priced, and sometimes it's just hard to sell. I know people that have had products for like 3 months and can't sell it, you know, and that is probably not the ideal investment, because the ideal investment would be to be able to turn that over for money, or, you know, as quick as possible. Now, as I said before, it's not stocks or shares. You can't just click a button and be like, boom, here's my card. It's worth $1,000 right now. That's the value, or that's the last sold listing. I want $1,000. Boom, you get your $1,000. You still got to find a buyer. You still got to do a lot of work, advertise it, you know, make negotiations with buyers, and yeah. So guys, I know this is a bit of a long one, but if you do the right thing from the start when you buy a product, and you know you've held it for however long you wanted, when you come to the selling point, you want to make that as easy as possible. So if you made those right decisions from the start, it can be very easy to, you know, sell your product. But yeah, that is pretty much it, guys. Let me know what you think about the 3 stages: buy, hold, sell. I know I've probably rambled on quite a bit, but I think it's just important as an investor, right? You got to go through those 3 stages to complete the cycle. If you're still holding some products, then I think you're still on stage 2, and you know eventually you're going to go to that stage 3, and that's when you know when you've completed your cycle. All right, guys, that is pretty much it. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.